Ape.
Hello, 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 and welcome to Over Coffee, our morning talk show on the Long Island Tabletop Streaming Network, or LITT. That's who we are. We are LITT, and this is where we talk games or just about anything. We would love your feedback. We'd love you to chat with us while you're getting ready for work or starting your day, or watch us later on Twitch or YouTube. And I am Game Master Dave, and I'm here with my co-hosts Rich, John, and Doug. Hey, fellas, what's going on?
There's so many ways you can go with the lit introduction.
Yes.
Lit, we're on fire, we're burning down, we're dead, we're burnt out. It's appropriate for every situation. I'm telling you.
Yeah, I
Every
think.
time we say lit, though, I keep thinking of that band from the late '90s that does that song. Down, 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 down.
There you go. Yeah, we should put that
Lit,
in.
Yeah,
lit, lit.
What
yeah.
was that? Oh, well, there you go.
Oh yeah. But we're like, we have an extra T in that, right? You know what I'm saying?
Yes, we
That's
have
right. We
we
got
have
an
one
extra
extra lit. I know
two T's.
and unfortunately I know what song John's talking about.
And as wild. We're much more wild than they are, obviously. We're on fire.
Well, there you go.
If wild means stupid.
Speak for yourself, Rich.
Well, good. Hello, everybody. I almost said it. I almost said it trying to change topics. I played some D&D last night in a campaign, mine of Fandelver, my ongoing campaign, and we spent 2 hours playing and basically got through about 0% of the storyline. So there you go.
That's
That's
the
good.
way it goes.
That's the way it goes. We still had fun. We had a good time. So I guess that's the purpose of any role-playing game or any games in general, right?
Yeah.
Have a good You
That's
guys
what they
play
keep telling
anything?
us.
You guys play anything recently?
No,
And
no.
also, you have basically D&D tonight, right at 9 o'clock.
So I don't know about that.
Okay.
I was talking with John. John and I were talking this morning, and based off of the way things are going at the moment with everything work and stuff like that,
Okay.
I may put it on a shelf for a little bit. It's just taking a lot of
A
effort
lot of
to.
prep time.
Yeah, it's taking a lot of prep time that I just don't have at the moment, and it's a shame, and I don't want to just keep. I could easily come up with things off the cuff, but that's not really what I wanted to do. So I think it would be doing it.
Okay.
So it's better to it's better to put it on a hiatus.
Unfortunate that a real life keeps getting in the way of our entertainment.
I know, right? But like John was saying, maybe we could find a different DM and we can go with it, but we'll see.
Yeah, it does take some prep. I mean, I didn't know what direction they were going to go in the Mine of Fandelver, and I have yet to read the entire book. It's a lot of material to read the whole book, and then it could be months before they get to most of that material. And so, I try to read ahead. But the great thing about the Mine of Fandelver and other modules that are like it or other settings is that they have multiple storylines, and so characters can go any direction. But then the GM or DM has got to know at least something about all those storylines. So there's some prep.
Yeah, well, there is. How dare we be true? But no, it's true, and I think sometimes not every player, don't get me wrong, but I think sometimes players underestimate the amount of work that actually goes into them.
Right.
We've talked about this a little bit before, but the truth is that it doesn't matter how much you offload onto your players. And there was that whole movement. I don't know if it's still around. It could be. Who knows? Since the game stores aren't opened, you never know. But the whole movement of a world building with the players. Let me tell you
Yeah.
something. That's tougher than a DM doing it themselves.
You're,
Because
you're saying sort of like an open, persistent world that the DM has to create depending on what the players do. Is that what you're sort of trying to say?
yeah,
Hmm.
yeah, it's just a lot more difficult. It's I don't know if it's difficult. It's different, but it's just as much work.
Yeah.
I mean, the prep's still there. I mean, it's not like they're helping you build the adventure. They can't. Because if they did, then they would know it's coming.
Right.
So in that case, you're just a stream, and then you're just writing a script.
Right.
So it's no longer a D&D adventure. It's a D&D show, which is different.
Right.
So, like you said, Dave, you need to know they could go in an unexpected. Once they get to the town, they could go in an unexpected direction. And if you don't know the whole storyline, you got to say, "All right, that's where we're going to end tonight." While I read ahead.
Yeah. Actually, I got a question about this because I noticed they were in the town in Fandolin, if people are familiar with it, and there are lots of quests. And one of my players, they mentioned something to me 7 years ago when we were talking about video games, and I happened to think of it last night. I happened to remember their comment, and this might be you guys might have a comment or two about this. They said they are a completionist, and I was like, at the time, I was like, what the heck
Now,
is that? And they were like, I have to complete every side quest. So I saw them stressing a little bit last night, and I didn't know what it was. I said, are you stressing because I just introduced like 5 quests to you when you met 5 different people in Fandolin? And she's like, yes, I have to do all of this. And I was like, wow, are you guys completionists?
no, so that doesn't usually translate outside the video game world. That's a video game.
Yeah.
Usually it's a video game thing, and I used to be, but then I started to realize, no, no, it's just silly.
Well, they actually had a 5-minute discussion as players or as player characters, even about which storyline do they go to first. What's more important? What's timely? What is time sensitive? And they had to discuss this. I'm sure I know this happens a lot in every game, but I was just curious that we were just talking about it. So, John and Doug, are you guys completionists in video games or in role playing games?
Uh,
Depends on the game, you know. In Diablo, I'm a completionist. I like to get all the storylines, all of them. I like to see everything. But in like Cyberpunk 2077, I was so excited about that game, and I still haven't finished it. So that tells you that.
Okay, John, what about you?
for me, it depends on the ease in which it is to be able to complete everything. Like I play a lot of video games, and I like some video games will give you like a bonus or like a special ending for completing like 100% or whatever. But
Yeah.
a lot of the times there'll be certain parts that are just like so unbearably difficult or so just obtuse that it's like, look, this is like work. I don't want to have to necessarily go so much out of my way to try to figure something out or like bang my head up against the wall a dozen times just to figure this out. Like I play video games and relax. If something's challenging and if it's a reasonable enough challenge, I don't mind trying again and again until I nail it.
Hmm.
But if I have to like, oh, you have to find every single missing puzzle piece, and you have to find every single bird feather, and you have to like track down every single like trophy statue, riddle puzzle thing, or whatever. It's like that's if I have to look something up just to determine something, like at that point, I'm like, I don't think this is really like a good use of my time.
You
I
know, my,
agree.
my friend last night was saying that they were playing Baldur's Gate, years ago, and that there was apparently a specific storyline depending on what class you were. And so she was like basically saying she would have to start different games to try to go down the class storyline so she would know what the results were for each one. She had her main game, but then she would have other games that she would just play to see what the results of that class specific
You see, but
story.
I can understand that. I'm a restartist. There's a new word for you, Dave.
There you go. Restart us. There you go. Yeah,
So
I'm gonna put it in chat so it's for actually it will go away on Twitch.
I I
I'm gonna
I
write it on our
like
notes.
to I like to I play a lot of colony sim games and base building games and stuff like that. And I restart a lot. I mean, a lot as I learn, right? I don't restart for no reason. Like I'll play through the game and I'll get as far as I need to get, and then all of a sudden I'll learn something. Oh, well, if I had done this instead of this, I might
Oh,
get something like that. All right, let's start over and just go that direction.
that's sort of like a completionist, but yeah, you're willing to restart to make sure you see it all.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
I do
interesting,
that from a colony sim perspective, and
interesting.
it takes me a very long time to get to end game because of it sometimes.
Okay, right,
So
that makes sense. All right. Oh, I just closed the. Oh, dang it! I just did something over here. Got rid of the notes that I had.
As a matter of fact, playing Project Zomboid, I have to repress that because I'm playing with other people. And we learn, we make mistakes, we get a base to a certain point, and I'm like, all right, that's great. Now, what if we had done this?
Hmm.
Do you want to restart the server? And they're like, no. I'm like, okay, all right, I'm just
Hmm.
asking.
Well, I'm gonna have to switch over to my phone real quick. This is a good topic, but I know we might want to talk about reboot or anything else you guys have on your mind. So should I cover just a couple quick
Yeah,
news
go ahead,
stories?
go ahead, Dave.
Sure.
And one of the things might lead into a topic, so I'll cover that one last. So from Tabletop Gaming News, here you go. If you've got a magnetic personality, then Cultivate, Cultivate, Cultivate is a game for you. It's a new board game from Pops and Beju Games, all about becoming a cult leader and trying to grow your cult. Okay. However, rival cults will be trying to steal away your followers. Who will be the greatest leader in the land? That's for you to find out. The game is on Kickstarter right now. That's Cultivate. And also in a lot of video game role playing games, also from Tabletop Gaming News, in a lot of video game RPGs, you'll find all manners and colors of slimes. But in our tabletop RPGs, you basically have green or black. And so I'm sure there's been release of some material that have different colors, but Skirmisher Publishing is looking to get those multicolor slimes onto your tabletop. They've released a book or an RPG supplement called A Rainbow of Slimes. That's from Skirmisher Publishing, A Rainbow of Slimes. So if you're looking to up your game in the slime and ooze category, check that out, A Rainbow of Slimes. And then the last one, I can't find the article right now. I was just looking for it before the show started, but I ran out of time. I sent myself an article about um, uh, one of the major news networks had an article about D&D selling. We talked about Hasbro before. We talked about things like that. But Cult later expansion, Zynar writes, Cult later expansion, TV evangelist. There you
Yeah.
go. The but the
Charles Manson edition.
Charles Manson, yeah, they could do a lot of expansions on this. But Dungeons and Dragons under Hasbro, under Wizards of the Coast, during the pandemic in the last year, they've seen their sales of their, printed material, not necessarily even online or whatever, but printed material go up 33% from previous years.
I want to ask, why is anybody surprised by this?
Yeah, well, I guess a lot of people aren't. Anybody that's in our industry isn't surprised by this, but I guess the world, like, again, maybe there's another reawakening, the 15th reawakening of Dungeons and Dragons, throughout the
Well,
history of Dungeons and
it's
Dragons.
it started from fifth edition. It's just everyone was sitting inside their houses last year. They're like, well, you know what? Might as well read a book. I ran out of stuff on Netflix.
Yeah.
It
Or
just
they're looking for things to do with their family because they're all stuck in the house, or Zoom, or play on Zoom, or whatever.
yeah.
Or decide that now's finally the time to try out D&D if you've always held off of like, well, what else am I going
Right.
to do?
It's on a list of things to do, a bucket list of like, oh, I want to go to Disney World, I want to paint the house, and I want to play D&D. Oh well, I guess I'm playing D&D right now.
And there's a ton of like content to just springboard off of. Like if you think about it with D&D, it's like, yeah, you got the three main books, but then now you've got so many supplement books, you've got campaign books,
Yep.
all this extra stuff. So it's like, yeah, you could literally buy a whole bunch of stuff and then just run it straight from those. You don't need to necessarily like, go crazy like trying to come up with a campaign on your own. I mean, granted, there was stuff before, but 5e just it makes it pretty easy, especially if you pick up the beginner's box and just go straight from there.
Yep. I'm gonna need to switch over to my phone, so I'll be offline for a minute. So you
Good.
guys keep talking about D&D or whatever you want to chat about.
I just don't understand why like it's a surprise and stuff like that. It really should have just been, this takes you back all the way back to what was it, the early 2000s. And I remember when I was working at my previous company, Toys R Us decided they were going to launch the first online web ordering for Christmas, right? And they and like the web, by the time they started doing that, the web was hugely popular, or at least the internet, maybe not the web browsing and stuff like that. It was
Yeah.
right. But all of a sudden, their servers crashed because they couldn't anticipate the load. Then they didn't have enough inventory. And I'm just sitting there with my hand in my head going, how could you not predict? I'm like, I don't expect them to get it right. I get that. It was like a first time, but it was one of those things that how could you not? It's like Toys R Us quickly became the Caldor of the web because they were out of stock of everything you wanted within like a day.
Well, that was
Well,
one
I
of the
mean,
first. Oh, go ahead, Doug.
no, I was gonna say like if that was as early as you were mentioning, then that was the early days of the internet where everyone got it wrong and no one really did it right until they started seeing the numbers, using the metrics to start building their processes after the fact. I mean, I understand. We understand now, looking back, hindsight, but
I
Yeah, but I mean, I would argue that some people did kind of get it right. It's just, yeah, it was very new and different to a lot of people. But like, as more and more things started like kind of creeping out of the woodwork, I think it's one of those things, and businesses do it wrong all the time, of thinking like we know what's best, so we're going to go what we think is the right answer, rather than listening to experts or what actually works. It's like, oh, this thing really works and this thing's doing really well. Let's do our own version. Well, why don't we work with the people who set that one up? No, 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 no. We'll do it ourselves. Clearly, we know everything that these people would have known.
right. I mean,
well, sorry, you go ahead.
I was gonna say, well, what that triggered is then the retail industry, the big box retailers were gun shy about going to the internet, and it took them a lot longer. So what happened in there? What happened in that void? Amazon.
Amazon.
That's
Yeah,
it.
no,
It was
Amazon. I remember Amazon was. I remember when Amazon was small. I remember when Amazon wasn't the massive dominating force that it is now. In that, like, you could order stuff through it, but it was fairly minimal. And instead, like, yeah, because a lot of stores kind of didn't really jump into the online bandwagon, it just allowed them to basically eclipse everything, to the point where nowadays, yeah, you can order a lot of stuff through places online, but even the majority of, let's say, smaller scale retailers, they just sell through Amazon rather than bother making their own infrastructure for it.
right, right. And then what happened is the big box retailers were left the ones that could compete. The only ones that could compete are the ones that had enough money and capital to actually just do what they were doing. So
Exactly.
it was so it's that. All right. So now that Dave is back on, you guys. So Dave actually did his homework and watched Reboot. Maybe I'll do that tonight, John. We can talk. I'll give you my opinions on Monday. But Dave, didn't Dave say he liked the original cartoon the best?
No, well, okay. Well, Dave, are you there? I don't see him on the thing.
Yeah, he's right there. I see
Oh,
four of you guys.
I am
yeah,
here,
but
but
he's muted.
as I drive away from the house, I'm gonna get cut off from the Wi-Fi, and I'll be intermittent for a second. I'll be able to talk in like 2 minutes.
Oh, we don't
Oh,
have
yeah, we
two
could, yeah,
minutes.
we could, I could fill 2 minutes. Um,
No shit. Oh,
yeah,
sorry. Go
Fill up 2 minutes.
ahead,
Fill up
John.
2 minutes, no problem.
Go
let
ahead.
me ask you guys a question, like something that I was thinking about, like,
Dude just walked away. It's like, I know he can fill up 2 minutes. I don't need to be here for this.
but I was just like, I was thinking about something interesting when it comes to, malls and even like Manhattan and stuff like that, about how, we're kind of in this weird area right now when it comes to commercial real estate. That, businesses that figured out that working remotely can be, just as productive and probably far cheaper than having these massive offices. I doubt that they're gonna, like, demolish all those buildings in Manhattan and stuff like that. But with something like, let's say, the way that they're developed or the way that they're designed, what do you think those could be repurposed to be? Like, I know things are a bit skittish right now in terms of the virus, but like I was thinking about, like,
Condos.
what like one of the projects I remember reading about online as something that was probably in the works, and most likely had a major brick wall because of COVID, was converting like an office building into like full-fledged housing of like
That's
putting
what's
it.
gonna happen. That's what's gonna happen, John. A lot of I've already seen it. I've already seen it. A ton of apartments have sprung up online that are industrial in fashion and industrial in decoration. And that's a lot of things that people are even looking for. They want to see, like the oh my God, it's so silver, or whatever kind of atmosphere. But you're going to see a lot of projects like that pop up over the next, I would say, over the next few years because of the reduction in office use by a lot of companies.
Also, probably by like the real estate market, like houses, like in spite of COVID, houses are still just as expensive, if not getting more so. So, I mean, real estate is, real estate's going to be real estate's always a commodity. It's the trick is, it's always been difficult dealing with affordable real estate. And I hate to say it, but it's always because it's one of those things of like, people are more concerned with, well, from a business sense, it makes sense. People would rather get the maximum amount of profits than any profits. So we'll often have something vacant rather than filled because they could always get more money. I find like, granted, not all the time, but there's been plenty of like commercial properties I've seen vacant for years. And I'm sure there's probably been offers or stuff that's come along that you could do with or figure out something to do.
because
But
it
like it
makes
must have been a,
it makes more sense and money wise and tax wise to leave it vacant than just take something.
Yes,
Yeah,
I completely agree, and I have actually a personal experience from that in one example. When I went looking for retail stores to open my first store, Game Table, I probably looked at about 25 different locations, and this one location was available, and it was pretty nice and everything like that. I didn't decide on it, but and then I signed a 5-year lease for Game Table. At the end of 5 years, or in my fifth year, I started looking for another location to open Game Master Games, and the same location was still unrented for 5 years. And I called them up again and tried to negotiate on the price, stuff like that. Decided not to take that location again. So I ended up talking to one of my friends, I guess, who was doing realty. I can't remember who I talked to actually, but they told me companies many times leave some of their properties. They don't mind if some of their properties are vacant because it's a tax write-off.
Yep.
yeah. So if it's zoned commercial like that, it's better write off than if it's zoned residential. And it's not.
Yeah.
Right. Right. So you can write off that property space both for the tax expense, which is probably covered by any one of your other properties,
Right.
for the tax expense, the maintenance of it, which you're doing again for any of your other properties.
But I
Uh,
think loss of potential income somehow. I bet you can write off tax of loss on potential income. I don't know. I'm not too sure, but
yeah, well, it's less that in that it's an expense for carrying the building based off the cost because it just has to do with how they write it off and amortize it over the
yeah.
years. But
I guess part of the reason why I look at it a certain way is just because I understand from a financial standpoint it makes sense, but it's always one of those things of like communal blight. And that, like, if you live in an area that has a lot of commercial buildings and the more and more stuff gets vacant, it basically means you just have this giant, massive dead zone that you either pass by every day or you see every day or you live right next door to. And it's like, there's so many things this could be used for, and instead this will just sit abandoned until who knows how long. Like we see that with the Great South Bay Shopping Center. They're losing more and more. Like that corner spot of what used to be Caldors, which is kind of what got this going in my head in the first place. Great South Bay Shopping Center used to have this giant, massive Caldors. Then it was abandoned for a while. Then it was a National Wholesale Liquidators, and that went out, and it's been vacant for probably about 15, 20 years almost.
yep,
But it's like it's a huge shopping center, and yet like a giant chunk of it is, and like at this point, like it's boarded up probably because people trying to break into it. It's got like broken glass. It's just the outside is starting to deteriorate, but rather than fix it, they just put up fencing. So it's just this huge, just like spot that just makes the whole space unattractive. And as more and more retail spaces in that area go out, depending on how long they go vacant for, or the fact that, like, because of this model, I hate to say it, but I think it's kind of like one of those situations where this same model of thinking is probably one of the reasons why online sales are as big, or at the very least, why online sales are so effective, because, you know, places have to compete that much further. So they have to either cut corners, or the services aren't as good, or they can't compete with as low prices as online. So they don't, and they can't. So it all kind of feeds into each other.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
I think they should just convert them all to food places.
I wonder if in the next year, because a lot of landlords, or the ones that do want to rent their spaces, there's a lot of experimentation now with, scaled rent based on sales, or, low front end, higher back end kind of things to get some stores occupied. I wonder if there's going to be a rash of game stores reopening on Long Island or nationwide. If because I've heard some landlords are saying, we'll just to get the space rented, we'll take 10% of your sales. I'm sure it's just for a period of time, of the first year, the first 2 years, maybe the first lease, but just to get people into their locations, take 10% of sales. I mean, that would be a huge boon for somebody that wanted to, start a game store.
I
Potentially.
don't know. I don't know. So like 10% of your sales the first year you open up, if you're not maintaining that, like it could be so low, and then you're like, oh crap, I should have thought this. Then you're like boxed into something. I don't. In New York, it just doesn't seem feasible anyway, in my opinion. Based on our previous conversations, I just think New York is too much.
Yeah, especially on Long Island. I think it'd be tough regardless. Besides, if you always have that, this is only for the first year, 2 years, or first lease, you always have that hanging over your head. Then what you're doing
Yeah.
is you're really just opening up a temporary business.
Yeah.
Right.
Because
I mean, I'm just curious if it'd be interesting to see if over the course of the next 2 years, if like, it seems like on Long Island, a new store opens up like almost every year, and then of course one closes. Maybe not the same one, or sometimes it could be the same one, but one closes every year. So
Yeah, it's us kids thinking that we're gonna do better than the previous institution, but you still have all the people that have their customer base for a long time still open, like
yeah,
Brothers Grimm and Comic Book Depot, and Legendary even, right? So it's just it's rough. It's a rough landscape.
yeah. Anyway, I guess that's an ongoing conversation we'll continue to have, and I guess we'll see what happens.
I mean, I looked out on Facebook, right? There's a slew of openings of like board game stores where people just have space to sit down and play board games, card games, whatever games you have, and all it is just slew of space, like all different kinds of rooms, right? And it's just like it's almost like an office, right? And in this office, they rented all these extra rooms so that people can set up their own individual board game spaces, which
Yep.
was really cool. And they do that. And like there was one that opened in New Mexico, and I saw one open in like Nevada. But they could do it there because an entire like 7 office space is about the same cost as it would be for a store, like a 2,000 square foot store in New York.
Yep. So Zynar just said that there was a city near him that had buildings that they rented at only 10% of the going rate, because otherwise the buildings would have been empty and the city would condemn the building. It
Oh,
was
wow.
nuts. That's interesting, John. I'm wondering why the town hasn't come down on the Great South Bay for not maintaining that corner store, because I know what you're talking about. I see it.
Well, I think probably because it might happen more now, because it used to. Well, technically, I think it's actually Babylon. Like the thing is that like it's
Yeah,
one of
yeah,
those
yeah,
things
because it's in
where,
West Babylon.
yeah, but I think probably because the rest of the shopping center was big enough that like there was always other stuff going on in there. But over the years, it's just taken more and more blows. Like the Payless has been out of business for a long time.
Justice just went out.
What?
Justice just went out.
Yeah, Justice went out. There's a couple of other that like New York and Co. I think went out. A couple of I think there's like a bank space that's been out. So it's like it's kind of hemorrhaged things slowly. But I guess it's a matter of like unless they quickly fill in that spot, it might draw more attention. I mean, I think a big example is look across the street to
Oh
that
my God,
Kmart
yeah.
shopping center.
Well, I mean,
There's
it's Long Island in general right now. I mean, I don't know if you guys travel down our major shopping lanes, like Sunrise and all that stuff recently, but it's tragically a lot of places are just completely open right now, and it looks horrible. It just looks horrible.
But the
It's
but the
rough.
funny thing is that like, and this is kind of the one thing that drives me nuts, is that you'll see all these vacancies, and yet more often than not, I'm seeing brand new construction, brand new construction. We build something, demolish it, put something up again, and it's like on the one hand, like fine, but on the other hand, it's like it's just somebody being like, rather than trying to revitalize the space or do something with that, or even work with the general community, I'm just going to find another spot, do my own thing, and run the risk of that happening again. Of just like, oh, I took this perfectly pristine, plot of like trees and woodland or whatever, and just demolished it to put up whatever.
Yeah, what is it?
More of an ecological issue is my thing, but
What is it like? Tear down something and put up a parking lot. What's that song like from?
Oh yeah,
From the 90s.
yeah.
all right, Dave. It's 7:02. Take us home.
Hey everybody, thanks for listening. Thanks Einar for chatting away. Really appreciate it. We got to get him on the show too. And we'll see you guys Monday. I hope everybody has a wonderful, cool gaming weekend. And I guess no basically D&D tonight.
Correct.
Next week won't be a streaming week, but we'll still have Watching Paint Dry and Over Coffee. So come check us out. And with that, take care, gents, and good morning.
Good morning.
good morning.
Morning.